Well, I guess I've been put here to tell how Rainey and I met. Uh, I'm sure her story and my story will definitely disagree.
Stop.
But the way I see it, she came into a bar that I used to frequent with a girlfriend. And when they came in, every guy in the place started watching, of course. And I noticed because she was so tall, she stuck out right away that she was extremely tall and very thin and attractive. And I watched a little bit, paid attention a little bit, but really wasn't greatly interested.
I went with my next door neighbor to a bar, and it was the first time I'd ever been in a bar in my entire life. I was around, I think I was 31? 30. I was 30. And I had been a single mom for a couple of years, and my next door neighbor said, "This is ridiculous, you're not dating or anything, and you need to go out and meet somebody." And I'm like, "Oh, I really don't want to." But she took me to this bar in Henderson called the Gold Mine. And we were sitting there, and I walked into the bathroom, and there was this guy standing there, and I kind of looked at him, and he had his arm around another girl, and then he grabbed me, and he pulled me to him, and said, "Oh, this would make a good sandwich." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you're such an idiot."
And she was a lot younger than me. But a little later on, I went over to play the jukebox. Well, first of all, when I really noticed her was a little later than that. She went over and played the jukebox, and I realized that I'm 6 foot tall, and I only have a 28-inch inseam. Well, Rainey was 6'2", and she had a 36-inch inseam, which was extremely a lot more inseam than I had. And when she bent over a jukebox, I was definitely aware that she was standing there. So after she'd left the jukebox, I went over to put somebody into it a few minutes later. And she came over and told me what she wanted me to play. And I laughed and played what she wanted and, you know, teased a little with her. And then I left and went back over to my drink. And she went back to hers. And I really never thought much about it after that at that time. And that was our original meeting. So we'd seen each other a couple times in between then, but not socially or anything. We just did walk. She walked into the bar and I walked into the bar at the same time. Even though I noticed that she wasn't really a drinker, I always held my own. I could always handle a drink. And so
our girlfriend and I went out, and we decided to stop at this bar again. And there was Mick, and he came up to me and says, "Oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in so long, and it's so good to see you," and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, you know, whatever. And he said, "I'd love to take you out sometime." And I said, "No, not gonna work."
So one time I was in there getting quite drunk. There was only myself and a couple girls in the bar. I was overhitting on one of them, and she came in with a different girlfriend, and they stood by the door. And when I saw her come in, you know, we hadn't enough to know who each other was then. That's about it. And so I went over to her and kind of put my arm up against her and drunkenly said hi and everything else, and was definitely not my soberest time. And so out the door she went. Her girlfriend didn't stay or anything, they just left.
So probably a couple months later, my next door neighbor again said, "I'm going to set you up on a blind date." And I said, "Okay." So this guy called me, and he says, "Well, would you like me to pick you up on my Harley, in my new truck, or in my 280ZX?" And I just rolled my eyes, and I thought, "Oh, this is going to go great."
And at the end of that week, My friend called me up and said he was going out with one of her girlfriends. Wanted to know if I wanted to come along, and they'd bring Rainey along. So I said, yeah, I guess I'd be fine. I really had nothing else to do and nothing planned or anything. So he says, well, Linda and I are going on the motorcycle. I said, you want to bring your bike or not? I said, well, I don't know. I'll talk to her. So I called her up and see if she was willing to. Well, she still wanted to go on this date and stuff, and she said, yeah, she would. And I said, well, you want to go on the bike or in my sports car and pick up, or how would you like to go? Because I know that Linda and Benny are going on his motorcycle, and she must. I don't know if she said anything in particular or not at the time. I can't remember, but we ended up going in pickup.
But I told my babysitter, I said, you know what, just beat me. That was the days of beepers, no cell phones. And I said, just beat me and I'll come home early. Just get me out of this date. So we ended up double dating with my next door neighbor and her friend and Mick and I. And we went to Marie Callender's for dinner. And then we all went miniature golfing.
When I went to pick her up that night, she wasn't quite ready yet when I got there, and the boys let me in the house, and she had this little black and white Springer Spaniel. It came flying over the top of the couch and up over the back of the chair and right up by my hands by the door, and I just reached out and petted it, and it just loved all over me. It's the greatest thing it had seen in weeks, I guess. Never thought a lot about it until she came charging out of the back room and said, look out for the dog, he hates men, he bites. And the dog and I didn't see it that way. He was just bouncing all over me and happy to see me, as could be. But I've had a pretty good way with animals. So I really hadn't cared much about going on this date. I really kind of was wondering about getting out of it, but I decided to go along with it. And so we went on to town and went to dinner. And
well, it was like 110 degrees out that day. This was in Vegas.
It was really hot. Those nice 108-degree evenings in Las Vegas. And she started feeling kind of faint. I said, "Let's go out to the pickup." And I reached to put my arm around her waist, but I didn't get waist. All I got was butt. And I realized how long her legs really were.
And we were miniature golfing, and I just started getting really dizzy and really sick. And I said, I think I'm going to pass out. So he took me to his truck, he put on the air conditioning, and he went and got me a 7-Up, which I thought was pretty sweet. And we just started talking because
we got back out, got her drink and cold drink, and we went out and pick up and we started talking. We finally decided to leave and drove on out to the dam and started BS until 2 or 3 in the morning.
He says, well, let's go for a drive. And I said, okay, that sounds great. And so we drove to Hoover Dam and we talked to 4 in the morning. And we just talked. I mean, just talked and talked. And it was so refreshing. It was so nice to just have a gentleman. He walked me to the door and he gave me a kiss on the cheek and said, you know, I'd really like to meet your boys.
Came back and said I'd like to see her again, but she bring the kids over for hamburgers that afternoon, and we just about never been apart since. So that's the way it happened.
I told the kids, they asked, do we have to have company manners? I remember that. And I said, no. I said, I want you to be yourselves, totally yourselves. And I said, you know what? And I'm going to bring the dog too. I thought, well, you know, this is the package. And if you don't want the package, dude, then too bad. So we went over to his house and we walked in the door and he goes, hey guys, I have a Nintendo. Do you want to play that? And of course, you know, Angel sung for these boys. They just thought it was the coolest thing. And my dog started playing with his dog and he barbecued up some hamburgers and it was just a really nice evening. And he says, oh, I just love your boys and they're just so well behaved and they're so sweet. And I was smitten. So actually, we started seeing each other. A day didn't go by where we didn't at least talk or call each other.
We just about never been apart since. So that's the way it happened.